Oh, hello, people, and welcome to another edition of What's Up with David Stewart. I was thinking this morning or this afternoon, whatever it is, what can I show you that's pretty cool today? Well, if you're Canadian, something that's really cool I can show you today. If you're an American, like a lot of my viewers and readers of my blogs are, I don't know how much you would know about this. It was the 1972 Summit Series between Canada and the USSR at the time. Now, this was at the time that the Cold War was still going on. Now, I've got sort of a deluxe box set of what was called 72 Complete. Try and get you a good shot of that in there. And it's the, I think there's what, 4 videos in here from the 1972 Summit Series between Canada and Russia, which became much more than a hockey series. Like for Canada, our game has always been hockey. And Canada always considered itself the best at hockey in the world. If there was anything we were the best at, it was definitely hockey. And we also realized how good the Russian Soviet players were getting at that time. But the Russian and Soviet players considered themselves or portrayed themselves as being amateurs, even though in reality they were probably as professional, if not even more so, than the Canadians were. Now, in a lot of Olympic games in previous series, the Russians were pretty handily winning every year in the Olympics in the hockey division. But people in Canada were saying, yeah, but what would happen if they ever played the Canadian professionals? Well, in 1972, Ellen Eagleson put together the Summit Series, in which it would be the first time in history that the Russians would play the Canadian professionals, sort of an all-star team of Canadian professionals, the best that Canada had to offer at that time. And this was big. I mean, this was huge. This was like to settle the age-old question of whether or not the Russians could compete with Canadian professionals. Now, the Canadian professionals started off this series, and so did most of Canada, thinking it would be a fairly easy win for Canada. They said, yeah, the Russians are good in the Olympics and as amateurs, but man, if they ever had to meet our professionals, they would see what hockey was all about. And it ended up being a tremendously emotional series for both Canada and Russia. Now, one has to realize that there was kind of a Cold War thing still hanging over at this time between Canada and Russia. And the series became in many ways like our way of life against their way of life. In other words, like, the free world, capitalism versus, socialism or communism. And it was amazing that it became focused on a hockey series. But this is what happened. It wasn't just, an exhibition of 2 teams that had a tremendous amount of skill in hockey. It took on real political overtones. And I won't tell you the whole story, but the first game in Montreal, the first 4 games of the series were played in Montreal. And this had to be an absolute classic in 1972. And the Canadians went into this game too overconfident. No one expected that the Russians and the Soviets would play the way they did. As good as they were. The Canadians were dead tired after the first and second periods. And they ended up getting pretty well demolished by the Russians 7-3 in the first game, and Canada got a very rude awakening. But anyway, this whole series, you know, kind of plays out almost like a novel with all kinds of characters, like Phil Esposito making his, you know, famous speech after the Vancouver game, in which the Canadian players, Canadian professionals, actually got booed by their own fans. I mean, Canada was upset that the Russians had not only proved that they could play with the Canadians, but were perhaps even better. And I mean, this was a key event in Canadian history, the 1972 Summit Series, but I'm not going to tell you all about it. But if you get, like I say, I've got 72 complete. I think I've got another series too. But in this box set anyway, they give you a couple of souvenirs. They're kind of really neat too, really cool. One is limited edition player cards. In the 90s, my son and I used to collect a lot of hockey cards. But this is one, I believe, it only comes in this box set. 72 limited edition. And it has, you know, cards with the team pictures and pictures of all the individual players in this set. And it's really, really cool. In fact, I even have, trying to get this focused here. There's one of the pictures anyway. And I even have, you know, a jersey, a hockey jersey. I have the red version because the Canadians at home wore the, basically the red with the white maple leaf. And when they went over to Russia, they played with their whites, as you'll see in these cards here. They played with, in their whites. There's a picture of Frank Mahovlich. I don't know how clear it is, but try and angle it. There's a little better picture of Frank Mahovlich. And he was wearing the white sweaters, which the Canadians wore when they were playing in Russia. And I mean, it was just an absolutely, you know, fantastic series. I've never, in my life, and I'm a hockey fan, seen a better series. It changed hockey history. Totally. Hockey was never the same after that. And who would have ever dreamed of a day when, you know, the Soviets would be, some of the Soviet players would be playing in Canada in the NHL, and the Europeans would be playing in the NHL. We never dreamed of that. But this all happened after the 72 series. So anyway, if you ever get a chance to get a hold, I've got another one, I didn't bring it with me though, of the 72 complete Canada-Russia series. It's definitely worth a view, because on this set they have actually all the games too. Not only do they have a documentary, but you can watch all the games from that series. Okay, that's what I wanted to share today, and hope you have a good Sunday afternoon, and we'll see you again. From Ken David Stewart.